We are going to talk about how we can create a true modal shift to public transport. Is it a possibility? Is it a pipe dream? How should we talk about that? And of course, we try to do that because we want to make lasting impact on for a more sustainable world. I would like to ask the panelists to come forward, then I can introduce you. As I said a while ago, my name is Servas. I'll be moderating this session, Servas van Berkem. If there are any questions from the audience, please raise your hand. There is someone in the audience with the microphone. They will come to you and you can ask the question and we can connect that with the panel. Please find a seat, join me, because with me today is Giorgio Travaini. Giorgio, you're part of your head program for Europe's Rail. Unfortunately, you only have 3 microphones, so we do have to share. Take it, Giorgio. Thank you. Welcome. We're going to talk about how to push public transport as a way to make transport in general, passenger transport, more sustainable. Could you tell us a bit about your organization for the people who don't know? What is Europe's Rail?
Certainly. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, good. Hello, everyone. I hope you all know what is Europe's Rail. If not, then I will tell you very quickly. So, my name is Giorgio. I am the head of program of Europe's Rail. Europe's Rail, in short, is a public-private partnership between the European Union and the rail sector. So, what we do is that we are managing a research and innovation program of 1.2 billion euros that will be spent in the lifetime of maximum 10 years. And we have just started this new program. Our predecessors, and this is maybe what you know, was called the Shift to Rail. So we had also an ambition research and innovation program on which, of course, we're building upon. And at the end, also to make it also even more understandable, we are managing the EU budget for research and innovation in terms of funds that goes to the projects that are related to rail. So if you are interested to join us, please do so. The way that we are doing is that we are launching open call for proposal, and then it will be up to you to reply with projects. But keep in mind that those projects fit inside one coordinated big program and a community also that goes with it. So
you are uniquely positioned to, at least for a European and pan-European level, to push the transport to more public transport focused passenger transport.
Absolutely.
So next to you is Stephen Weiss, your Chief Executive Officer of Jieskje in Austria. For the people who don't know, could you explain a bit about what Jieskje is?
Of course I can, yes. We are a public company. We are owned by the Ministry of Transport in Austria. We are a company of experts, 120 people roughly. We have 3 main tasks. The first is we are a PSO authority. Therefore, we order 85% of the passenger train kilometers in Austria. So we get the money from the provinces and from the state. And then we order the services mainly by the ÖBB. That's the first task. The second task, we are in the infrastructure sector. We are controlling the infrastructure projects, rail projects in Austria, mainly from the ÖBB infrastructure, which is mainly the pendant to ProRail in Austria. But we do not only control it, we also are involved in the development of how should the rail network look like in 2040. That's an initiative by the ministry, and we are involved. And what we are doing there is that we also bring our knowledge from the PSO area into this task, because we have to bear in mind what we build on the infrastructure side shall later, of course, have a good usage from the train operator. So we shouldn't build anything which then later on is not that good as we want to have it. So that's the second part. The third part is we give state funds for mainly in the freight sector in Austria. That's roughly about 150 million euro per year. And I think that's why Austria has a quite good modal split in the freight sector. We have nearly 30%, and that's 10% better than in the average of Europe.
Thank you. Next to me is Jieskje, Hollander, and you're regional director of Arriva here in the Netherlands.
Yeah, that's correct.
And most people, at least I know Arriva as a company who runs trains and buses here in the Netherlands, but you're of course all over Europe, all different markets, and you're connected to Deutsche Bahn.
That's true.
Well, what did I miss? So what other markets are you active and what other?
Yeah, well, I will start with the beginning of the story. We indeed operate in bus and rail markets throughout Europe, 13 countries actually. In 5 of them we're active with rail. In the Netherlands, I think we're quite big actually in the rail market, especially for a public transport company. Here today we are present with our Glimbal stand, and with Glimbal we are also exploring actually the way beyond the rail and bus markets, and we try to open up actually the process of booking all modes of transport for passengers in the Netherlands more easy. Yeah. And it can be, that can be share bikes, share cars. We also make it possible for people to book the trip with the least CO2 emissions, so you can also filter on CO2 emissions, and I think in that way we're trying to, enlarge our sustainability impact in the Dutch market at least. The part of Deutsche Bahn, you already said it, and I'm responsible as a regional director in the eastern part of the Netherlands for our eastern operation, and that encompasses 2 contracts, 1 specific rail contract and 1 combined rail-bus contract.
Thank you. And on that side, we have with us Aske, Mastrup, Wieth-Knudsen. Yeah. Did I pronounce it correctly?
I think so. It's a very difficult name. After I got married, it got even more difficult to say my name. Sorry.
Well, with my name, it's the same. It's impossible for people from outside of the Netherlands to pronounce, so I'll try to be as good as possible. At least you're vice president of DSB, and you're the Danish state railway company.
Yeah. We operate the railways in Denmark. Most of the trains are operated by DSB, so we connect Denmark by environmental friendly trains. And in that company, my responsible is sustainability. So my job is to convince everybody inside the company how great an opportunity sustainability is for our sector. And also I hope to convince you in the audience that we should do even more working on sustainability to attract talent, attract customers, attract capital to our business.
Thank you, and thank you for being here. Next to you is Reinhard Wissenberg. You are the Director of Strategic Sustainability of ProRail. That is the national rail maintenance company of the Netherlands.
Yeah, rail infrastructure, yeah.
What does strategic sustainability mean?
Well, that's also actually an element that I think I added to it, because I feel that when we talk about sustainability over the years, we've all started looking at our main operations and what we always so nicely call the low-hanging fruit. So the easy bits that we can do within a company. The easiest one, for instance, for us would be contracting green electricity instead of grey electricity. That immediately reduced our carbon emissions with about 80%. Mm-hmm. But it's relatively simple, and it also doesn't really touch upon, let's say, the existence, why you as an organization actually exist. The strategic part for me comes to bring sustainability as close as possible to your core activities, which in this case for ProRail is maintaining the railway tracks, ensuring there's a rail network that's open to, basically to good quality operators that enable all of us to travel in a sustainable manner. So when I talk about sustainability in the first sense, I would talk about energy, I would talk about our material use, I would talk about biodiversity, how we care about all the green zones next to the tracks, but the strategic part is actually modal shift.
Yeah.
And not because ProRail is the only one that can assure modal shift, not at all. It's probably the most difficult element of sustainability, because all of us need to work together to ensure that actually rail is the best option for everyone, so we get people out of the cars, out of planes, into trains. That's the strategic part.
Thank you. Next to you is Silvia Kaupa-Götzl, and you are from Postbus Austria, and of course you are Chief Executive Officer. Could you tell a bit about how you, there's a bit of an echo. Could you tell a bit about how you look at the sustainability issue about what Reinhard was talking about, and also how you in your day-to-day work, or how Postbus also in day-to-day operation put that into work?
I'll try. First of all, good morning, everyone. It's fantastic to be back at the World Passenger Festival. It's my 3rd year in Amsterdam, and it's super nice to be back and talk about sustainability here. Well, we've talked a lot about trains here on this podium, in this panel, but there's actually buses as well. And I strongly believe that we won't be able to shift modal split to public transport if we forget about buses. So I'm here to remind everyone that buses are actually part of the public transport systems, and that if we want to create any kind of modal shift to public transport, we need to improve bus services. At least in Austria, we definitely need to do this, and because rail tracks are fantastic. I've been working in the rail business since 2005, and I know how important they are, but they're not everywhere. At least not in Austria, because we only have one big city, that is Vienna, and we have lots of regions and provinces and small cities where there's no rail tracks, and won't be for the next 15 years. So this is why I'm here, and this is why we need to talk about bus services as well, if we want to create any shift in modal transport.
Thank you. It is, well, good question for my difficult answer. Good answer for a difficult question. So if we look at it today, we're talking about how to push the modal shift, but there is an idea behind that, because when you push the modal shift to public transport on all the levels, you get a more sustainable transport system. That is, we all agree. You all agree on that presumption. Does that fit? Yeah? So
yes, because I don't believe in the metaverse.
You believe in the metaverse, that is it.
Well, we could solve this whole problem if we all stayed in the metaverse, so we don't produce any carbon dioxide. But I don't think this is the future we want to have, really. Sorry.
So if we want to meet each other, the easiest and best way to do that is with collective public transport. Well, people move in broader lines, and we collect people, and we need to do that, to go into your point, in different levels. So sometimes it's a bus, sometimes it's a shared bike stream, sometimes it's a train. Okay, good. How do we push that? Because we've been talking about it for quite a while now, and we're in the midst of a global climate crisis. We've been for quite a while, but it's getting more and more urgent to switch that, and still we don't seem to get there. And in all the different, in all your stories, you talk about wanting to get there and pushing really to get there, but what is needed to push through it? What is needed to make a meaningful extra push to make sure that most people, when they travel throughout Europe or even within their own city, don't use the car but use public transport? Is anyone who has yeah, go ahead. Jieskje.
Well, I think, of course, in the past years, we went through this whole pandemic experience, and that has made us, well, an enormous setback, I think it was, for the public transport sector because of the lack of passengers. However, we're recovering, and at least in the Netherlands and in my region, we see people coming back. Then we, of course, now in the time that markets are, how do you say it, not that trustworthy, volatile. People cannot count on pricing of infrastructure progress and programs, and we see that PTAs in the Netherlands are struggling with, they want to take the step next, they want to invest money, however, prices are growing up, innovation is expensive, and then you see that also financing systems are really kind of old-fashioned in a way. In the Netherlands, for instance, and I'm sorry that I talk from a Dutch perspective, but that's the context I best know, I think, is we've always seen in the liberal public transport development, we've seen that the general, the government, actually, the Dutch government has paid for the infrastructure side, and the provinces took on the role of paying for the public transport in their specific region. However, with new modes of sustainable transport coming up, railway transport, we talk about battery trains, we talk about hydrogen trains, we know that the operation of that forms of railway transport are raising or are going up. And you see a discussion developing also between provinces and the general government of the national government on who is going to pay for what. So that's a discussion, a really political discussion, I think, that we need to bring to the table, that finance structures that have been working so far are not working any longer. So that's an important thing. And I've been in the last year program director of the sustainability program for the Arriva Group. There I have seen that throughout Europe, actually, we're all in a very much of a various stages of development, but it all starts, of course, with PTAs wanting to move the PT market further, invest in sustainability, and first of all, also keep wanting to invest in timetable hours and knowing that, or timetable-free form of public transport where passengers are just there at the railway station and they can rely on the fact that the train is actually coming there.
Like when you have to take a tram here in Amsterdam, I don't look up the timetable.
Exactly.
I just go there and I know a tram will come. And
that's most ideal. And of course, I know that in rural areas, that's far more difficult. But that's about, talking how much do we want to invest there in keeping those areas accessible.
The key point I take from your response is that, so the connection between wanting to push forward, that even if all the parties wanted to go forward, it's still the hassle of, or the obstacle of trying to decide who pays for what and how you can push it really forward. And the interesting thing, in the Netherlands, were just large, giveaway of the money for big infrastructure projects, and still the majority goes to cars. And Reinoud and to the others, but from the Dutch perspective, of course, we can go to the broader European perspective, but why does this happen? Why is there still no real shift to if we all agree that public transport is the way forward, both in space but also in sustainability, why is there still, it's so hard to get it invested in
Well, and then there are two comments to make. One is that, at least from a real perspective, but then making this comment, I think, immediately shows the flaws of the system. So that's why I make the comment. From a real perspective, we're actually very happy because there hasn't been this amount of real investments this high in a very, very long time. So from a real perspective, it feels like a change, and that the momentum might be there to invest in real. But then, what's the flaw in here? And I think it links to what you're mentioning. I feel there's no mobility sector. So there's a rail sector, there's a car sector, there's an airline sector, there's a bus sector, there's a bike sector, but there's no mobility sector. We don't talk to each other hardly, we don't cooperate at a decent level, we don't make the decisions, not on a political level, not on a municipal level, not on an organization level. As in, I'd love us, for instance, when we look at infrastructure, at some point to say, all right, we can invest here, but the alternative to investing in maintaining it at a certain level could actually be investing in a high-frequency bus line. That might actually, from a societal perspective, be a way better investment than keeping up the rail. So that is, I think, one of the flaws, that there's no mobility sector.
Aske?
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I think we are being a little bit pessimistic at the moment, so I will throw in some optimism. Because what we see is that at the moment the world leaders are sitting talking about solving climate change. And unfortunately, we are not at the end of the climate problem. Maybe we are at the beginning. But our sector, we are part of the solution and not a part of the problem. And that's a really, really good position we are in. And what we see is that companies, CEOs of companies, they need to take corporate responsibility. And the new thing is you don't only do it for what's happening inside your company, you also do it for your value chains and the way your staff is actually coming to and from work. Because if you want to be responsible as a company, you need to take true responsibility. And I think that's a really huge potential for us. And we see, at least in Denmark, that actually the CEOs of the companies, they ask, how can I show the world that I'm a responsible company? One of the things, we go to them and say, okay, you can try to push public transport to the commute in and out of your company. We help you with mobility solution, we help you with guaranteeing bikes at the station, for example. And then they have suddenly an annual report where they can state, we did this to save the world. And I think this is a small step, but it's a huge opportunity that we should all take and use in the public transport sector. So that was a little positivism,
So to push,
and I think it will help us.
Companies to use public transport, like some financial institutions who now said people are not allowed to take a plane from Amsterdam to Paris, but they have to take the train. These kind of steps that has to be taken.
Yeah, we see increasing number of companies making what you could call green transport policies within the company, and meaning that if you travel above or below some hours, then you have to take the train and not the flight. Yeah.
Thank you. Giorgio, you wanted to respond as well?
Yes, thanks a lot. I like this optimism because I think this is the way forward, in the sense that I'm working with a lot of engineers for research and innovation activities, and the typical mindset of engineer, I am one of them, is to think about solving problem. And when you think of solving problem, you will find a problem, that's for sure. We need to change a bit our mindset and thinking about, okay, what is the solutions for the future? And then let's find a solution about it, not let's to resolve a problem with another solution that will create another problem. So I think this is very much important, and we are in the center, I would say, the rail sector is in the center of this, let me say, sustainable offer. But it is also true that rail cannot bring people from A to B, cannot bring staff from A to B. So intermodality, multimodality, it's for sure one of the solutions we have to push forward. And for me, this is the core. And another positive aspect I would like to say is that today we have much more means, not only financially, and I think the colleagues have touched upon it, but also technically. Because the rail sector, like any other transportation sector, it's really investing in transitioning from an analog world to a digital world. Somebody is more advanced, somebody less advanced, but in few years, all the system will be digitalized. What it means that sharing of information will be much easier. We need to push also for a change, if you want, inside the rail system itself. For example, we're pushing a lot for having a new traffic management system that is also looking across borders, but also, so already optimizing this, but also open to the rest. So indeed, well, the example that was made before about the airport is one of them, but not only. Buses, it's clearly another transfer means, and plenty of it. So we need really to push this openness, and I think the technical solution will be there. Following the technical solution, I would say the financial instruments and the compensation mechanisms will come. But it should not be, I think, a barrier to invest. We should push for it. And also the same for the legal part. A lot of discussion I have is that people are stopped because they see the problem of the legal. So again, forget about the problem, find a solution, and then we will solve also the legal part.
Thanks, Silvia.
I'm a very optimistic person as well, but I have to add some realism here. I'm sorry, because what we're talking about is a change in behavior, and that's the most difficult thing to do. which is why I think there is a solution, but it still is very difficult because people love their cars, full stop. Like the modal shift is 80% of people using their cars, whereas only 20% take public transport. And changing this behavior or convincing people that it's actually better to use public transport, this needs a lot of measures, I think, on a multiple level, because I think, and I think we can do this totally, but it takes time. It's a process, and it's not going to happen tomorrow. But one good thing where you can start is, we talked about municipalities before. We actually came on the panel, and we think this is where you have to start. This is because this is where a lot of movement happens and where people are living, and like when they move on a day-to-day basis, basically. So where you could start is, I think we need role models. Like there's always like important people in municipalities, and those people need to start using public transport. There is one guy from my company, like Tibor. He was here yesterday, and he was talking about mass and new ways of mobility, especially in municipalities where you don't need huge or like big buses, and you introduce new forms of mobility, and then we always need the most important people in the municipality to start using those new forms of mobility, because then others will follow. And so you can be a role model for your children or for like your family or whatever. Yeah. And I think this is how we can start this, and then it's going to work. But we need lots of different measures. We could talk about this forever, I guess, but this is a good way to start.
This is actually, we try to of course, tackle step by step the obstacles we have to get through. So, Stefan?
Yeah, I agree with Silvia too. We have to change the behavior of the people as well, because it's at the end of the day, it's a lifestyle matter. But I would like to bring another aspect. Actually, we talk about supply and demand. It's the demand for mobility is there, no question, I think. And our task is to look at the supply, and I think the railway area and also the bus area gives a good supply. Actually, in the metropolitan area, I think you do not really need a car to commute to your work in the metropolitan sector area. It's a bit different in the rural area, and you mentioned that Austria has one big city, but the rest, it's not so easy. And I also agree with your holistic view. It's not always the solution to build a new rail track in an area where you easily, to lower costs, can bring the people from A to B by buses, for example.
Yeah, but the thing we just talked about is that there are, of course, many levels of public transport. All panelists have some experience with all the different levels. So you don't always have to build a track, but when you look at, and I think that's what you're saying, if you look at the modal shift, the difference in the amount of people who still use non-sustainable forms of transport is, of course, still quite high. And how do you get people into that? And that's perhaps when you look at what the Deutsche Bahn did this summer with the €9 ticket, that's one way of getting people in the trains. After the €9 tickets, of course, the train program with air conditioning or problems or other issues was going on, so people had a bad experience, so perhaps that was not such a good idea. But we do have to entice people to use public transport and to change their behavior.
Yeah, well, building on your realism, but also on your optimism, I was actually quite surprised by seeing, it was a research done in the Netherlands by the Dutch Railway Company. They did a kind of, quite recently, they did some rework on the famous, and I think some more or less old-fashioned customer need pyramid. And they saw that actually a new kind of passenger is introducing itself, and it's the sustainability passenger. So apart from the category of passengers that relies on public transport and just has to use it, and we also have the category that likes to use it, there is a new category of passengers coming up that really, from an intrinsic motivation, wants to contribute something in their day-to-day commuting or day-to-day traveling, and they are actually making choices from a sustainable, internal compass. And I think that's a spark of optimism that we can build on further and that we can enhance as a sector, and we should actually, I think.
So it's more the principled traveler who, from principle, uses.
Yeah, and this group is growing.
Okay.
So that's I think, a good sign.
Aske, yeah, there's optimism and pessimism combined into really pushing forward. Do you have the same principle like a traveler in Denmark as apparently we have in the Netherlands?
Well, I'll start giving some numbers to also add some optimism. Because what we see at the moment now is that international traveling is booming. Yeah. We are selling at 40% more international journeys now than we did in 2019, which was a good year. So it's really incredible increase. When we ask international passengers, they say, oh, that's because we don't want to fly. We know the plane is not good for the environment.
So it's the same kind
so
of customer.
Once a year when they go on holiday, they take the train. We are so happy. Now we need to teach them they should take the train every day, not only when they go on holiday. Another example, allow me to introduce a mobility example. If you introduce a good mobility solution, then you get more passengers. My example is from Copenhagen. We have the S trains in Copenhagen. We had a ceiling of 90 million passengers a year. We couldn't break that ceiling. Then in 2010, we introduced a mobility offer. You can bring your bike for free into the train. Then you have first and last mile with you in your hand. Now we are at 111 million passengers a year in the S trains. So the problem now is we don't have room for more bikes. So we reach a new ceiling. But I think the bike case is a very simple example showing if you have a good first and last mile solution, you get more passengers. Now we need to think of some more sophisticated models.
Stefan, what is your response to this? And then I go to Reinhard and then I go to Giorgio. But
now, of course, it's the last mile is especially in the rural area a very, very difficult topic, of course. And we often talk about multimodal knots and such things, and that's quite easy in the metropolitan area. In the rural area, I think we'll find a solution which is without a car, an e-car at the end of the day, or a sort of taxi or whatever to bring the people to the railway station, to the bus station, wherever it is. So I think we should also be realistic on that, because I do not think that the whole mobility sector will only be public. I don't think that this is a realistic scenario.
Yeah, Reinhard? So not per se public, but collective is what you're saying. So car sharing schemes, these kind of things have to be done in more rural areas.
Exactly.
Okay, Reinhard.
There are two things I'd like to add to the discussion. One is actually building on your point on bikes, that from the Dutch perspective and Dutch research, it shows that people that take a bike are more inclined to use public transport. So it feeds into your point as well, that starting in the municipal area is probably key to have this change of behavior, and discourage the use of cars there, encourage the use of bikes, even if it's bikes within the city. But the interesting thing is, when people hop on a bike, they are inclined to hop on a train. So that's a model that has at least shown itself in the Netherlands. The other element that I'd like to add to it, when it comes to the modal shift, from a sustainability perspective, because you can do it for two reasons. You can do it from a business perspective, and then basically the only thing you would care about is growth. So as a public transport, the only thing we would care about then is that our numbers grow. From a sustainability perspective, it's getting people out of the cars into the train and ensuring that the share of public transport is larger. This can also happen through a decrease of overall mobility, ensuring that the decrease in car use is faster than the decrease in public transport. From a sustainability perspective, that's pretty important, because the way we're traveling and the numbers that we have in traveling, certainly in Europe, are in itself pretty unsustainable. Yeah. If you look at the climate goals. So it's still the same stuff that we need to do, eh? Mm-hmm. Get those sustainability people on board of the trains, keep them there, and then make sure that we then move to the way larger group of people that don't have sustainability as their prime reason for their behavior, but of course like it. But the prime reason is price, comfort, that is actually there, etc. So we need to improve our services.
But that also means that we need to rebuild, and then Silvia, we need to rebuild our cities, our countries, to make sure that people don't need to live that far away from where they work, so the travel time is as little as possible.
Yeah.
And not for international travel, we shouldn't invite people to come back that often, like 5 times a year to have a trip to the Alps. Would be fun, but still. But instead of that, we should try to entice other groups to take a train and get the growth for the shorter term from newer groups of people to travel by train.
And your point, Silvia, it discouraged the car. Now I'm not here to do the car bashing or whatever, because I understand the behavior of all of us. The car is a superb mode of transport. And the way we've organized our cities and society around it is to fully facilitate the car in all aspects. I remember another session that we had
many.
Servas, we had many. And it was about plans in the 60s for Amsterdam, demolishing whole neighborhoods to construct highways. It was the American model of the suburbs. That's what we've been doing for 40, 50, 60 years. Yeah. So of course people hop in a car. We don't even need to blame people to hop in a car. It's the superb mode of transport. Well, I'm a bike fan, but I don't even have a car, but I still see the point. So we need to discourage car use.
To have a short nerd off, there was an actual plan to demolish Central Station and only to leave off the facade and put a big box of concrete for parking spaces and like leveled highways going into Central Station just down the road. So your drinks yesterday evening wouldn't have been possible if that plan went through. Silvia, so pushing people and changing perspective of transport and mobility, so getting people closer to where they work, and encouraging people to use that. It's easy to say that, and I feel the optimism, but at the same time, I do feel your original point, Jieskje, for the that it's also hard to convince policymakers to really invest in that and to really make sure that it is an attainable option and an option that is, well, nice to travel with. How do you push that?
That was the point I was also trying to bring into that discussion, because I said we need lots of different kinds of measures, and that's not only something we can do as mobility kind of companies, but we also need politicians to support what we're doing, of course, and that seems to be very difficult because everyone, like politicians, are afraid of taking measures not everyone might like. Which is something I totally understand. That's fair enough because they need to win elections and stuff like that. But it seems to be especially difficult in Austria. We have managed to introduce the climate ticket, which is something we're really proud of. That was one really important step. But we haven't done much else so far. Like we discuss speed limits, we discuss, I don't know, many things, like not building streets and stuff like that, something you were talking about. It seems to be very difficult to introduce those measures. And the other point I was trying to make is that we don't only need to look at the customer, but also at why and what distance he and she is traveling. Because most distances that are traveled in Austria are less than 5 kilometers. It's very short distances, and everyone uses cars in regions. Not in Vienna, I'm not talking about the big city in Austria, but in the regions, everyone uses a car. That means you get up in the morning, you get into your car, you go to work. Every day, and that's what uses or emits carbon dioxide. So we need to start there, which is why I personally, for my company, have decided that we're going to talk about the mobility of our employees, because they also come to work and they drive buses, which is fantastic. But I have to be kind of realistic in seeing that those people are taking their cars to come to work and to drive buses then. So that doesn't really make sense. Yeah. And that's something I'm trying to change now, which is something I can do to introduce modal shift or to make more people use cars instead of, or use public transport instead of cars, I'm sorry, of course. And this is what everyone can do, like the mobility of employees. And I think it's not only politicians we need to blame, we can also do something ourselves.
Jieskje.
Yeah, can I?
Yeah.
I see the clock ticking away.
Yeah,
so,
we have till 10:30, so there's still time.
I'm quite nervous now, but
Don't.
you actually closed with, you know, we can do something ourselves, we need to take ownership. And I really agree on that. And I think, especially when it comes to financing and the role of the PTAs in countries, it is quite comprehensible. I can understand why they are afraid, you know, to invest hundreds of millions, because of course in the railway sector it's about these kinds of amounts of money at one time in new technique that they haven't seen. So I think that's really important that as companies and at public transport companies, we can really make the difference by starting pilots, gaining enthusiasm for pilots. I know a real estate agent that always seeing it is buying it. Yeah. And I think in a way it's true, you know, if you see a hydrogen train, if you see a battery train, if you see a hydrogen bus, this new technique is appealing for PTAs and passengers alike. So I think that we need to reach out and be active in getting enthusiasm for pilots at least.
Yeah, so and that way, by getting that, even though the pilot might be quite expensive and not
yeah, but the interesting thing, I think, and we have good experiences in partnering with ProRail, for instance, in certain you get quite a lot of partners are actually involved in the sector and have, you know, interest in the results of the pilot. So if everyone takes its fair share of investing in this pilot, we might help each other along the way a bit further.
And Giorgio?
I do agree, and actually, if we're speaking of pilots, at the end, it is also at the end of what we're doing with Europe's Rail, trying new technology and bringing up the prototypes and pilot it on the lines with different companies. But I think, so I do see the advantage to start local, because then local you can, let me say, showcase and already influence a few communities, etc. But we will then have an issue of scaling up, because when you start local, you only look at the solution that fit the local environment and doesn't necessarily has the ability to scale up and manage traffic in a different level. And one of the examples that I can make on it is, for example, the mobility as a system. So this is a solutions that, you know, it's offered in many municipalities, offered at the regional level, maybe a bit larger, but I am not so much aware. And it is about, you know, putting existing transport demand and linking it together. But you actually do not solve, let me say, the sustainability issue, because you don't optimize traffic. You just simply, you know, keep your own rail timetable, for example. Before we were speaking of timetable, you keep your own rail timetable, and then you know, link it to the own timetable of the buses, and so you don't optimize in function of the demand. And so I think we need to push our bar farther as well. And, you know, I don't know if the metaverse will be the future of all this kind of thing, but what I know, and I think the previous presenter said that is true, is that when internet was put on the table, it created plenty of new services. And today, again, as I mentioned before, we have digitalization and automation, which is kicking in all transport modes, and I really believe that it will create also new type of services.
Thank you. Yeah, we do have to wrap up, so a really quick response to that. But
okay, well, it was just because we were talking about money before, and I would say money talks, and green financing also talks. And our example is that we get a discount on our interest rate because we invest in green mobility solutions. So I believe working more together with corporate companies who also wants a green profile, and together with the capital markets who wants green financing, we actually have a good basis for establishing the necessary capital for inventing new solutions. So another optimistic approach from my side.
I'm quite happy that we can all end this session at least on a very optimistic note. It seems that we have a lot of things to talk about, and my favorite kinds of dialogues or discussions are discussing why I want to keep on talking, and I do right now, but I'm not allowed to, so we have to stop. But luckily, there are many more opportunities, of course, today, many more sessions. Look at the app for where you can go to, and what other brilliant speakers will come and continue, and of course, we'll make lots of other sessions and events in the future, so please look at that. Of course, we're going to go to Vienna, and there is a video I would like to show you real quickly. Katrina, is it going to be shown on the big, well, it's going to be on the big screen. Let's have a look at that, what we're going to do next year.
Hi, I'm Sabine Stock. I'm a member of the Executive Board of ÖBB-Personenverkehr, Austria's largest mobility provider.
Servus in Vienna. My name is Alexandra Reinagel, and I'm the CEO of Vienna's public transport operator, Wiener Linien.
Congratulations to Amsterdam for such a great event. It was great meeting you all here at the World Passenger Festival and having such wonderful insights and discussions.
One reason why the city of Vienna is voted the most livable city in the world year after year is its dense public transport network.
I'm very happy to announce that the next World Passenger Festival will be held in Vienna, Austria.
Wiener Linien combines classic public transport with the advantages of modern sharing mobility, as well as innovative solutions for the first and last mile.
Vienna is located in the heart of Europe. From here, ÖBB's large bus and rail network starts. And maybe even more important to this audience, from here our Nightjet network starts.
We look forward to welcoming the World Passenger Festival to Vienna next year and giving you all a deep dive into our out-of-the-box mobility solutions. Enjoy.
I'm sure Vienna will be the perfect stage for us to connect. I, for myself, I'm looking very much forward to meeting you all and having great discussions, continuing our exchange. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And next year we have to go to Vienna. That's fun. I love the city, so that's no punishment. Thank you for being here. Can I have a big round of applause for our wonderful speakers, and hopefully see you soon. Bye.